Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening again, man. I just want to welcome you guys back to the Conversation 98 for another episode for this week, man. I'm so excited, happy to be back, and looking forward to tonight's conversation. Man, all is well, and truly excited about it, man. We deep in the summer. Summertime is coming to close for some people, but a lot of people, summer's just beginning, and I just wanted to take this time to say, hey, I hope everybody's doing well and having fun, making memories, and doing what you do with your family, close friends, and and all of that. But again, I'm excited for tonight. Excited about this conversation tonight. Looking forward to this conversation. It won't be before you long. We want to get in and talk about something that I really feel like that is good conversation. So without anything else to talk about, we're gonna jump right on in it. Share this a few more with a few more people, and hey, that's it. But again, man, thank you guys so much for tuning in with me. We're on episode 142. I appreciate the love, appreciate the support. Been going for a long time now, and I just look forward to having these conversations because guess what? The whole intent about the platform is just have a platform where we talk about things, relevant topics from a Christian perspective that people generally don't talk about. We're gonna go get right on into it tonight, and we're gonna talk about tonight. We're gonna talk about the power found in properly addressing your wrongs and dealing with yourself when you are the problem. Because guess what? The reality is, most of the times when we peel back the onion, we are generally the problem, or some of the part of the problem lies within us. It lies with us, and it's so easy and it's so natural for us to try to point blame or try to find fault in somebody else or in an external source instead of dealing with within. And the reason why I said there's power in addressing your wrongs is, first of all, there's power first in acknowledging that you're wrong, but also be willing to accept the fact and address the wrong that you bring to the table. And the power in that is you would eliminate a lot of undue stress, a lot of just craziness when you tap into being mature enough to say, hey, guess what? I'm wrong. It was on me. And guess what? I'm going to do what I need to do to address it and move forward. And that's where you find your power at. That right there is where you'll find your power at. And the reason why you find your power in that space is because, you know, too many times what we try to do is we spend a lot of time, energy, and effort wasted. We waste a lot of time, energy, and effort trying to prove the wrong that we know that we are wrong with. We'll try to spend that time, energy, and effort trying to point the blame on somebody else. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you are in a relationship with your spouse and you're frustrated with it and you want to put the blame on your spouse and never take ownership of the role you played, yes, you can sit there all the time and justify your actions and point to all of these things. But at the end of the day, your relationship is not getting better, not just because of your spouse, but because you're not dealing with you. Or even on your job, it can be your boss, it can be your subordinates, it can be any situations or circumstances where you're looking to find and point blame to somebody else. But at the end of the day, you have to deal with yourself and the things that you can control, which is you. Which is you. That's the reality of it. That's the reality that, like it or not, that is the reality. And that's something that a lot of people don't like. But the truth is this, the truth is, most of the time when we start dissecting the problems that we have in our lives, the root of the problems that we find, or the root of the sustained problems that we have in our lives, a big part of that is you. A big part of that is us. A big part of that is our unwillingness to change, our unwillingness to see things somebody else's way, our unwillingness to address our wrongs. Because there's a lot of things that we just do because guess what? That's what we do and it goes unchecked. But a lot of the things that we peel back the onion and look at it, we know it ain't right. So why do we expect others to just be okay with it and us not address that? And that's why I said there's power, especially to address you when you are the problem. Because there's many situations that you will find in your life that you are the source or you are the cause of your own problems. And the best way to deal with that problem is to deal with yourself. to really deal with yourself, to really say, you know what, this me, I'm going to take some time to deal with and address the reality of who I am. For real. Just sit down and deal with and address the reality of who I am, right? And when we start talking about this, we talk about, to properly address your wrongs, right? It's not just an acknowledgement. Like an acknowledgement is the first part of it. It's like 1A, right? But to actually right your wrongs, there has to be actions that come behind that to either make up for the wrong that was done or to change the behavior that caused the wrong. Because most of the time we just want to say, yeah, I know I was wrong, or I can acknowledge, or I can get to a space where I can publicly say, hey, this is what I know I do wrong. Well, what you doing about changing? Because if we really look at it, most people, they'll sit down and they'll acknowledge it and they'll say, hey, this is what it is, but they still will try to find all different ways and reasons why not to change. And the change that they seek really lies with their willingness to change and deal with their own behavior. Because if we be honest, I'm talking about seriously being honest, we are the ones that bring the most heartache to our own lives. We are. Us. Me, myself, and I. You know what I'm saying? And that's the reality. That right there is a reality. Why? Because it's so easy for us to not deal with ourselves. And we know, and this is the thing, we know what we do. We know how we are. We know how our ways are, right? But we like to hide behind a lot of things. Many of us, we hide behind titles. In relationships, we hide behind positions of authority. We hide behind trying to have a position of power over other people. Those are the things that we hide behind. And we like to do that because that make us feel like we're in a sense of control. But the reality is, no matter how much control you may feel that you have, you're still dysfunctional. And guess what? Just because you don't want to deal with you, that don't mean that other people should have to deal with your dysfunction. And your dysfunction has come from your unwillingness to deal with yourself, to address your own issues, to address your wrong ways. And there's power in getting to a space to say, you know what? I'm not only going to acknowledge, but I'm going to address and change my wrongdoings. I'm going to address and change my wrongdoings. So many times we look for people to apologize, or we look for people to right their wrongs towards us. But how often do we sit down and return the same courtesy to other people when we are the ones in the wrong? When we are the ones that aren't doing what we're supposed to do? When we are the ones that fell short? When we are the ones that have error in our ways? How often do we go back to genuinely make that right? Or how often do we sit down and try to justify, well, they did this to me, or this, that, and the third? Or we just feel like we're entitled enough to just operate that way. And a lot of us operate that way because guess what? We take people for granted in our lives. We just always expect them to be there. So because we take it for granted, guess what? We don't want to check our behavior. And we just snap at people. We get short-sighted with them. And then guess what? We end up living a life full of regret because we didn't appreciate the people when we had a chance to. And those people leave us. Some of them may transition and pass away. And now we're living with that guilt for our whole life, all because we didn't want to change something that we had to control to change. We had to control the change. The sad reality is most of us look for other people to come in and change their behaviors to fit, to cater towards our desires. And we will turn around and refuse to even address our ways and what the things we can control. We will refuse to even attempt to even change those things. And like I said, there's power in your ability to not only address but change the things that you are wrong. Like the things that you are wrong in a situation, right? And that power comes with you taking control over those things you control, right? You can't control somebody else's actions. You can only control yours. You can only control your decisions. You can influence others, but you can only control your decisions. And when you get to that space to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on what I can control, and I'm going to put the rest in God's hand, that's when you unlock your superpower and your ability to walk in your purpose a lot better. That's when you'll be able to do that. You will be able to do that. I would tell you it is a good space. Hey, good evening, Mama. Good evening, Mama. Thank you so much. Mama said there's power because there's liberty. And you know, I was sharing this with a friend earlier, but we have to learn that there's our attempt to try to always have control blocks our blessings. It blocks our blessings because what I've learned is, you know, that I've learned is that in our vulnerability is where we can receive the very thing that we seek. You know, a lot of times somebody may have done wrong to us, right? But we will hold on to that and try to force them. We want to make them feel like we feel, and we don't want to forgive and forego. So we try to manipulate and control the situation to work in our favor. But we find ourselves stuck in that situation, stuck just over and over, stuck in it, and we don't see the return that we seek. The reason why is because we're unwilling to be vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I don't have control anyway. I'm gonna give it to God. I'm gonna trust God. And in that vulnerability is where God releases the blessing you were seeking. But we got to get to that space. We have to get to that space. And what I mean by getting to that space is it is not comfortable getting to that space. It is not comfortable to trust and go against what we say, what may feel natural to do, right? Because, you know, we all want control. Let's not act like we all don't want control. We all don't want a sense of control. We all don't want to feel like we got it together. We all don't want to know what the outcome going to be. We all don't desire security. Right? Let's not act like, and I'm not sitting up here acting like we don't want that. And I'm not telling you not to have those securities in your life. But what I am speaking towards is, you know, there's a lot of things that we do wrong, and we do wrong by others, even intentional or not intentional, that we are the only ones that have the power to deal with it, especially when we're the ones that's bringing the problem. Don't sit. It doesn't matter about what somebody else did when we doing wrong ourselves in the situation. We need to go to that situation to just say, you know what? I'm going to address this. I'm going to address my behavior in this. And guess what? When you address your behavior in this, I'm going to tell you there's a peace that comes with it. And it really don't even matter about the other person because you will be at peace. You will be at peace. You will be the one sleeping well at night. You will be the one that's getting over that, and you're not overwhelmed with anxiety and dealing with all these things, because guess what? You are releasing. And by you releasing, by you saying, you know what, God, I'm willing to be vulnerable and just not try to control what I want to control, that's when God will begin to pour into you and give you a place, a peace that surpasses all understanding. I mean, a peace that it will get you to a mental space to where now you can continue to be more productive. Now you can move on with your life. Now you probably can receive the very thing that you were looking for. Because sometimes we look for things sometimes we are upset and we fight so much for control because we look for things to be coming from a source that God may not even intend it for that to come from that individual. We may be looking for somebody to love us a certain way. So now we mad and we in our wrong, and God wants you to deal with yourself so that you can forgive yourself, so that you can do right by that person and you can release and move on so that God can bless you for somebody else to give you what you need. Because a lot of times in our own desires and our own ways, we look for people to fill us up with things that they don't have the capacity to do it. And we find ourselves frustrated because we're looking for people to fill our cup with something that God said, you know what, they're not ready to do. But because we refuse to address our wrongdoings, we sit there and we stay stuck in a place of perpetual frustration. We stay stuck. Mama said, Satan tempted Adam and Eve by telling them that they would be like God. Because of their desires to have the same power of God, they made a choice that did not bring them what they thought they were going to gain. Yes. And a lot of things, I mean, and we can really, really go down that road and address that. But what I want to continue to talk about is, you know, is just realizing that, look, there's power found in addressing your wrongs, you know, just addressing it, right? And, you know, just really addressing it. There is something very profound and powerful by simply first saying I'm wrong, acknowledging that you're wrong, and taking the time to address the behavior and the choices that led up to the wrongdoing. By simply doing that, a lot of relationships will be healed. A lot of mental illness issues will be healed. There will be a lot of restorations of things that people have been seeking. There a lot of trauma will be forgiven, and you will be able to address a lot of things just by simply saying, hey, I'm wrong, and guess what, I'm going to do the work to change it. I'm not trying to justify what was done. I'm going to address my behavior. And when you begin to do that, what you will find that that is the true power, and that will release a spirit of forgiveness, and you will be made whole in whatever you're dealing with. I'm telling you. Kevin said many times the hardest thing to do is be honest with ourselves. That is so true, brother. You know, I'm fully aware that the person we lie to the most in our lives is ourselves. And because we lie to ourselves so much, we also don't like being wrong. So that's why it's so hard for us to simply be honest with ourselves. That's why it's one of the hardest things to do, to simply be honest with ourselves. And that's why I'm saying that there's power in not only acknowledging you're wrong, but doing the things to change your behavior and correcting your wrong when you are the problem. Because many times what we'll find is the people that we're mad, we be mad at somebody else externally, but the reality is the problem is with us. The problem is with our mindset. The problem is when we just selfish. The problem is we have undealt with trauma. The problem is we are triggered by things that we are refusing to address and deal with. The problem is we make other people the problem because we don't want to deal with and look at ourselves in the mirror. And guess what? That's on us. We got to do that. We have the power to change that. We have the power to overcome that. We have the power. And I would tell you, power is found when you properly address your wrong. Not listen, properly addressing your wrong is not just saying, and not just an acknowledgement. It is not just an acknowledgement. Properly addressing your wrong is not only an acknowledgement, but it is an action that is followed by that acknowledgement, that is accompanied by an apology and changed behavior. A changed behavior, a consistent effort to work towards that changed behavior, right? To make that wrong all right, right? And that's what comes with it. It's not just, oh, I know I'm wrong. Now, a lot of people can easily acknowledge it, but they don't have no intent at all to change the behavior, because they will probably feel empowered, or they will feel entitled that they have a right to do that, because they have lied to themselves and convinced themselves enough to say, you know what, I was justified to do what I did. And even in that self-justification, you still wrong. You still wrong. Hey, and at the end of the day, you'll have to give an account for that. But I told you guys I wasn't going to be before you long tonight. I really, really appreciate this. I appreciate you guys so much. Make sure that you all go check out my social media platforms at The Conversation 98 on YouTube, The Conversation 98 on Instagram, at 98 Conversation on Twitter, The Conversation 98 here on Facebook, and at The Conversation _98 on TikTok. You guys have a great and wonderful evening. Thank y'all for the conversation. God bless.